William Shakespeare said that all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. Clearly we can see that this is true as the world as a whole. He was a wise man, he knew what he was talking about, but this is also true on a company level. And what I mean by that is that each of us has an important role that we contribute to the entire working machine, to the stage play of our work environment. As supervisors, your duties include directing, coordinating, choreographing, and most especially inspiring the employees who work under you. This is an essential role. If you can think of a play without those kinds of roles involved, it would be next to nothing. You are the ones that do all of that. But of course, your job becomes ever more difficult when you have cast members who are not performing to the best of their ability. What do you do when you have an employee who's forgetting their lines, who is making missteps, or who is missing rehearsal as a whole? We are pleased to introduce you to the acts of cast correction, encouraging your players' best performances. Now, first and foremost, before we can even get into the nitty-gritty of correcting your cast members, you need to set the stage. So, theater location. Where are you going to sit down with your cast member and have an adult conversation, a dialogue about the problems that you're experiencing? You want to pick a location that's quiet, where neither of you will be interrupted, and where you have the opportunity to really delve into the problem together. Showtime is also a crucial factor to consider before going through your cast correction. So you want to pick a time where both of you have ample amount of opportunity to discuss the problem, and where the employee has the opportunity after the fact to sit and recall and ponder the things you talked about and the corrections that they themselves need to make. It's also important to note that this is not for center stage. You want to take criticism in a private location to avoid any undue embarrassment on the parts of your employees. Okay, Act 1. Act 1 is all about problem solving. Scene 1 is to remember the casting call. Now, if you remember a long time ago, you have to dig back in your memory a bit, but at one point in time, you reviewed resumes, you called references, and you saw that this was the one person who best met the criteria that you were looking for in this position. That's hard to remember at times when they've been messing up and you feel frustrated, but you really did at one time see them as that. It's important to remember as well that 95% of working adults are responsible. They want to fix the problems that you bring to their attention. They want to improve their personal performances. Apathetic actors are the exception. So just remember that when you're sitting down with them, is that most of these people are going to respond well if you can present the problem well to them. Scene 2 is looking for underlying causes. Now, who here has ever experienced something outside of work that affected their work behavior during the day? Give me an example. Throw it out for me.
Sick kid.
Yeah. Sick kid. Perfect. Can't come into work because your kid's sick.
Or exhausted because
you're worried about it.
Night.
Yeah, you're exhausted, you're tired. So there are always outside influences that are acting on us. And sometimes when you're sitting down trying to correct this cast member, you see them as the problem. They're not the problem. Their behavior, the ways they're responding to situations, that might be a problem. And many of the times there are underlying causes. Like you said, there could be problems at home. They could be experiencing negative work relationships that make it stressful to come to work. There could be sickness, as we discussed, and there could just be a general lack of motivation. And these things aren't excuses for the behaviors that they exhibit, but they're important for you as supervisors to understand. We need to show empathy for our employees. And if you come into this dialogue expressing first and foremost concern for the individual and for the things that they're experiencing outside of work, you're going to see much more positive results. Okay, and scene number 3 for this is to stick to the script. When you're in a position of power, we all kind of get into the mentality where it becomes easy to use belittling, patronizing, or even just general down-talking sorts of language. I think that's just human error. But these things really have no place when it comes to our cast correction. There is not a lot of faster ways to make enemies than to talk to your employee like they're just less than you are. Okay? All right, Act 2. Now this is where the love scene comes into play. This is where we show appreciation and acknowledge the good things that our employees do, because they give a decent amount of their life to this job, and there is a lot that they do well. So giving good reviews and words of affirmation. Who here has heard of the 5 languages of love? 1 and 2. Okay, so as you guys know, it's basically the idea that we all express and feel love in 5 specific different ways. And words of affirmation is you do such a great job. Thank you. We appreciate your help. You are fantastic at planning. These are the kinds of things that constitute words of affirmation. Who has the love language of words of affirmation in here? Perfect. Yeah, I don't, but that's great to have. Everyone in my life has that except for me. So I would argue that in a work setting, we're all words of affirmation. You want to know exactly where you stand. If you're performing well, the things you're doing well, along with the things you need correction. And if you present these to your employees, they're going to take the criticism a lot, and it'll be a lot softer for them to accept that. So it's important to remember to tell them, you've improved so much. You are so hardworking. We appreciate all that you do and all you contribute to our team. You have such a great eye for detail. I wouldn't have noticed that in a similar situation. Doesn't just hearing those things just makes you so happy? Okay, so the idea of giving a compliment while also criticizing can be a little bit hard to swallow. You're like, I don't really know how to do that. So I want to give an example. This is a clip. It's from actually not a theater performance, but from let's see if it works, from a TV show. And it's in a relationship setting, but I think that it applies directly to work-related things as well. Give me just 1 second. I don't know if it's going to work. Here, I'm going to go to the internet. Forgive me for this. I always have technical difficulties at this point. Oh, reliable YouTube. Are we doing good so far? You guys have any questions? Okay, awesome. Any
You're doing
comments?
a great job.
Thank you.
I like the theme. I like the.
Thank you. I know, I was like, this might just be a little bit weird, but let's see.
It makes it interesting. It makes me want to see more.
Good. I'm grateful. Any of you watch Heart of Dixie?
Yes.
I've just gotten into it, and it's fantastic. Okay, so we're just going to watch like a minute of this.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Yeah. Oh, okay. All right, bye-bye now. It's just Shelby.
The girl from Bluebell Palooza? I thought you said your first date was a disaster.
It was. Then I went to apologize, and that led to a second date, which somehow has led to a third date. All she does is talk about online discount shopping. She keeps on sending me links for designer ties at incredibly reduced prices.
So why are you going to brunch at Grandma's?
Because I don't know how to break up with her without hurting feelings. Wait.
What? As luck would have it, you have hit upon my area of expertise. My friend, allow me to introduce you to the compliment sandwich.
Compliment sandwich.
On top, you've got your bread. Nice little piece of flattery like, your beauty humbles a simple man like me. Then quickly get to the meat. But you and I both know timing isn't right for us. And then before she has a chance to argue, you hit her with one final compliment. A woman as perfect as you deserves it all.
It's a compliment sandwich.
Dude. 15 years from now, you'll be wearing a discount tie when you leave Shelby.
Hey.
Okay, so that was just a quick example of a way that we can offer criticism and compliments at the same time. So turn to the person next to you and give them a quick little compliment sandwich. Not a real problem, please. We don't need that.
Go ahead. Looks like you're feeling better. You have a smile on your face.
I don't know.
I know, they're so hard.
And then you give your
I know. We did it.
You look fabulous today. Maybe next time try wearing your hair up.
Wow.
Jacket is very beautiful.
Alright, that was good. We'll wrap it up there. That was a perfect example. Thank you for doing that for everyone.
She helped me with hers.
Okay.
Hers being late. Why were you late?
Good job. I think you guys get the idea. Just a scene note on this. Public praise is encouraged. So we were talking about criticism. That needs to be done in the not closet, office. Do that in the office.
Okay, we're on my
But if
now.
you are willing to be vulnerable as a supervisor and go out on a limb and publicly praise your employees, you're going to see that they see you as more praiseworthy as well. Okay? All right. The final act. This is where the plot gets so juicy. The actual criticism. Okay, so Louisa May Alcott, she was an artist of a different kind, but she wrote and said, I like good, strong words that mean something. Now, when it comes to correction, we all too often tend to lean on words that are weak, that don't mean very much. And the problem with that is that they're easily misinterpreted. So you might go into a meeting thinking that you verbally corrected someone, their behavior is going to change, and they might walk away from it thinking that you just gave them a suggestion for good behavior. You know, so we want to use strong words. I want to do this. This is just a little run-through activity. So suppose you sit down with them and say, I'd like you to think about your current performance and how you can improve. Now, if you were in their place, what are you going to walk away from after hearing that? What are you going to do? Are you going to think about it? What are you going to think about if you do think about it? You can think about probably a million things that you can improve.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know that they're going to find the one thing that we specifically want them to improve with that kind of language? They're not going to, is basically what it's going to come back with. So instead, we want to use more descriptive, strong language. I've noticed that you seem to be struggling with following up on your projects. I'd like you to make a concerted effort to contact those involved and make sure they were satisfied, and I expect you to do this consistently from now on. Where's the room for misinterpretation in there? Exactly. There is none. Okay, so that's why we want to use strong language, even if it can be really intimidating, to make sure that you see the results that you want to see and that the employees can make meaningful changes to their behavior. Okay, scene 2, making a plan of action. So you need to remember in all of this that you're co-problem solvers. You know, remember, they're not the problem, their behavior is. And once you can delve into it together, figure out, looking for those root causes, you can come up with a solution together. And the great thing about this is that you are in a position of power wherein you can make real change happen for them. And if they're improving, you're improving, your whole team is improving, the company is improving together. You want to describe any new processes that you come up with together. So maybe in sitting down and counseling, you find that they would like a weekly review on the projects that they're working on. So you need to come up with when they're going to email you, when you will respond by, anything that will go into making those processes more concrete for them. Even writing it down can be really good for them to have something to refer back to, and for you to be able to kind of have a ledger and say, okay, I know I told you to do this because I wrote it down. And the lastly is determine exactly what will happen next time. This is especially important for disciplinary type things. Say you have an employee who's prone to angry outbursts. Sitting down with them and talking about it and saying, okay, so next time the printer breaks, how are you going to respond, rather than kicking it and breaking it and buying us a new printer? And if ahead of time, if they have a game plan for how they'll respond in that situation, it's much more likely that they'll see success in the future. Okay? All right, so our end scene. You sit down with them, you have an adult-to-adult conversation, you problem solve, you come to conclusions. What can we expect by incorporating this process into your work environment? You can expect healthy working relationships, increased respect of your cast members, the increased likelihood of seeing results, and ultimately, an absolutely stunning performance on your part, on the part of your employees, and as your company for a whole. That being said, I hope you can take these suggestions, incorporate them into your work, and break a leg.